For the next topic, I'd like to call up Joseph Hoang-Luu. Joseph has over 10 years of experience in corporate consulting roles across Australia and the UK. Joseph's also going to be helped out by Richard. Sorry, Richard, I never got your surname. Yee, there we go. And apparently this is going to be a two-parter presentation, so take it away, guys.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. So it'll be myself and Richard presenting to you today. Won't be as mathematical, but hopefully it's refreshing and exciting. So to begin our presentation, we just wanted to set the scene and describe the difference between qualitative climate risk assessment and quantitative climate risk assessment that we've seen in the model to date. Our solution is focused on quantitative solutions, but we'll just go through the points of difference between the two.
So on the qualitative side, you've got the first point there. It's not necessarily linked to validated data sources.
Whereas quantitative is generally grounded in evidence, science, engineering, and economics.
The outputs for qualitative are generally very coarse. So you've got red, amber, green, those little coloured charts.
And quantitative, it is potentially more granular in output, but not necessarily.
You've got a limited ability to inform business decisions from your qualitative data.
And from what we've seen, the quantitative assessment that we've performed is able to inform a wide range of business decisions.
Qualitatives, sometimes result of surveys and things, so they're very quick to implement.
And quantitative assessment generally requires an uplift in education and capability across organisations, which we have experienced with clients that we've provided services to.
Any organisation can do the qualitative, small, medium, large, very quick to do, easy entry for that organisation.
And quantitative assessment, actuaries are very well placed to deliver this type of modelling, which we'll get into more detail later in this presentation. And us being KPMG consultants, we couldn't help but put our creds on the page. But we promise you that this will be the only time that we'll show our creds and toot our horn. After this page, we'll be doing no more of that, but we will probably spend a little bit of time on this just to reap the airtime.
And also I can promise you there's no formulas in our presentation as well. So Climate IQ was developed in 2021. It's a global product. It's had significant investment from a range of multidisciplinary professions. So you've got climate scientists, economists, actuaries, and financial modelers. So it's a substantial piece of work developed and it has been successfully implemented across the globe, both in the UK, US, and Asia Pac. In Australia, we've got a team dedicated to delivering this, and our clients across the globe range from hotel groups, retail food groups, energy companies, private equity firms, wealth management companies, so the full spectrum of businesses, and really reflecting that every part of the economy is going to be impacted by measuring climate risk.
And please, no one use any image recognition software to deconstruct our logos here. It is sensitive information. So the structure of our presentation is covering 4 key themes, and the idea is all about how KPMG, our team, has been able to successfully service clients following these 4 key learnings. That is client buy-in, a common language, leveraging capability, and working effectively with entrepreneurs. So to begin, the structure of our presentation is generally going to follow the following format. We'll do a role play, and then we'll talk about a learning that we've discovered during our engagements, and then we'll continue that process.
Hi, Joseph. Our company is Climate Pro, and I even removed the plastic cups on my coffee to recycle.
Hi, valued client. That's amazing. That's going a step further than the average client.
So we already do our part for the community. Thanks for your offer of assistance.
We can assist with more than meticulous recycling, though. Did you know that? And so the role play here is getting clients to buy in at more modularized, chunked steps of the engagement. As actuaries, we are all very proud of our humongous, complex mathematical equations and computations. But really, when we're working with clients and most anyone outside of insurance, pensions, statistics, mathematics, we really need to chunk it down. And so our solution here is a very simple flowchart of essentially what we have embarked on with our clients, a journey of transforming mathematics into a simple narrative. And so you can see here, a lot of our climate narrative starts with global greenhouse gas emissions. So our story is we can quantify transition and physical climate risk, and it all starts with the level of greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere at any point in time in the future. And where does that lead to? Well, greenhouse gas emissions will have an impact on atmospheric conditions, humidity, temperature, wind speeds, and they will in turn impact what climate scientists call acute risk, what actuaries and catastrophe modelers call nat cat risk, which you can see in that middle top box, just a depiction of tropical cyclone tracks over time. And that's what we call acute physical risk. But on the flip side, in climate risk analysis, clients are also really keen to understand what they call transition risk. And transition risk is about government, economies, businesses, actions in response to mitigating climate risk. And so you can see this bottom box depicts macroeconomic variables that we model. For example, foreign currency GDP, commodity prices, commodity volumes. What's important to understand here is that this bottom box actually informs the top box, number one, rather than the other way around. And once we are able to quantify box number 2 and 3, we can overlay this information with clients' income statements and balance sheets to project in the future how they'll perform. And we just wanted to depict this very nice looking flowchart because we're very proud of it. It does depict pretty much what we produce for clients in a very chunked down form. So the second key learning that we want to talk about is having a common language with our clients. I did take a lot of effort to draw this interesting dice. And the idea behind this is just to depict an example of a real life situation where I had to use an analogy to talk about tail risk to clients. And I like this analogy because we were able to talk about a dice. Generally, dice has a 1 through to 6. But in this case, we've replaced one of the sides with a 100 score. Now, I would like to change that to 105, just so that arithmetic is smoothed out. But if the number 6 side of the dice was replaced with 105, what's the average expectation of a roll of a dice? Quick maths, anyone? First up. Okay.
We'll give you the answer.
Too much pressure. The answer is 20. But the interesting thing about a die where the number 6 side is replaced with 105 is the average is higher than 5 out of 6 of those options. And that's something I've used to explain a little bit of tail risk to our clients that gives them a light bulb moment where they think, wow, how is the average expectation more than nearly every other side of the dice? And another example of common language for fun. This is not something that we've actually delivered as advice to clients, but just for a bit of fun, we're just talking about a carbon tax introduced will have widespread economic impacts, and some of those impacts may not be obvious. So instead of carbon tax, we've changed it to a smoking tax. So what happens when you introduce a smoking tax? Well, the government will end up with a treasure chest of gold, as you can see there. What else happens? Well, there may be a decrease in smoking habits. which may lead to healthier people, which might actually lead to happier homes. This is all theoretical, nothing has been analysed, so don't hold me accountable to this. Okay, we'll move on to our third key learning, which is about leveraging existing capability. And this is real life examples of where we've actually had to leverage capability within the clients that we've serviced. The first example is digital twin models. So a digital twin model is a model of the physical world that represents either a set of assets, infrastructure, or environment, and we can model how it will behave under certain conditions. As myself, I didn't have the capability to build a digital twin model. So instead, we were able to leverage this existing capability, and it belonged to an energy distribution organization. And we were able to embed this model within our stochastic climate risk model, which in turn allowed us to do very complex computations and find out very interesting mechanisms and heat bottlenecks within the network. And yeah, that's an example of what we're able to identify, so accurately identify de-energization hotspots within an electricity grid. This one, as actuaries, most of us are very familiar with, so demand elasticity curves. So this is a capability that exists within an agricultural client. And it was leveraged because we were able to use their existing demand elasticity within the calculation of projected income statements. And the impact was that the statements reflected more product-specific responses to price changes. So a very simple one. And this last one's a bit of a fun one, but how we've kind of interacted with entrepreneurial clients. Some of these might be made up. Some of them might be inspired by real events, but it's just a bit of fun.
Joseph, can you please provide the climate risk analysis at an individual asset level?
High value client, yes, I can, but please consider the following. So generally, when we do any analysis, we parameterize to an assumed level. So if we do an analysis on a portfolio of assets, we probably parameterize assumptions, loss functions at the portfolio level. However, if a client asks us to dive in deeper and look at the asset level within a portfolio, there may be unexpected outcomes. So an example here is a QQ plot of how a modeled solution fits for a portfolio of assets. However, when we dig down into individual assets, the QQ plot of the model at an individual asset level doesn't appear as good of a fit. And the reason for that is the parameterization at the initial solution was not intended to be produced at asset level. And so when an entrepreneurial client really asks to dig into the detail, it's very encouraging because they really want to use it. But it should really be used with care because you didn't plan for the results to be used at that level.
Another problem for you, Joseph. Notice that the model did not explicitly allow for shark attacks that may occur due to rising sea levels. Can you please add this into your model?
High value client, yes I can, but please consider the following. So as actuaries, we love problem solving no matter what question gets asked of us. So if someone asks us to include shark attacks, what needs to happen in order for a shark attack to occur? Well, first off, there needs to be that rising sea levels as suggested by the client. Happens with a probability A%. And then you get the tidal surge, occurs with B%. And then shark attack, that occurs with C%. And not only do you need shark attack to occur, but you need human injury to occur. And that has been parameterized at D%. And the important message here is A, B, C, D% material enough to include in our analysis.
Joseph, the CGE model projects a reduction in our product sales price. Can the model allow for an increase in prices at the expense of sales volume?
High valued client, yes, I can, but please consider the following. Here we're depicting the performance of, let's say, a client who has a competitive advantage in the market. And we understand their demand elasticity, competitiveness within the ecosystem they currently operate. Whereas a computable generalized equilibrium model projects the dynamics between different industries and sectors, their demand and supply of goods and services over time into the future, potentially up to the year 2100. And it's very difficult to say that a competitive advantage will exist out to 2100. So the message here is understanding the assumptions embedded within the model that you're using and whether if it holds true when pushed to extremities.
So closing comments. So a lot of the work that we've done to date has been with sophisticated clients, probably the larger clients. What that means to get buy-in is really requires very complex stakeholder management. And so, typically in insurance companies, you actuary to actuary or actuary to CFO. But with the work we're doing outside in financial services, you need to engage the CFO, you need to engage the sustainability manager, you need to engage the engineers on the ground who interpret the results of the model, calibrate the model according to their experience, and that comes back as a feedback loop into the results. You've got multiple people to manage, and the success of it can be, even getting all that in place, and the results get presented to the board. So many stakeholders, to get the buy-in, it's got to be effective across the whole organisation, and that's where we've found they're the most effective engagements.
Yeah. And my closing remark is more personal. So I joined the profession over a decade ago, qualified over a decade ago, and the reason behind that is I wanted to use my mathematics to make a difference to society. And at that time, I thought it was through insurance, and insurance is a great product, don't get me wrong. Jose, I love insurance. But I found I wanted to do something different, and through the engagements that I've had with Richard and the work that I've been able to do with clients outside of insurance, of all sorts, small, large, of different industries, I've really gained a lot of purpose and satisfaction through delivering my mathematics in these areas. And I guess my closing remark is, if you're anything like me, climate change is a great opportunity for actuaries to add value to. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph and Richard. As before, the floor is now open for questions. Got any questions from the floor, please ask for the microphone. Still waiting for this wonderful app to work again.
I just have a quick question. You talked a bit about interdisciplinary modeling between climate scientists, actuaries, and so on. How difficult is it to blend these different disciplines, or what challenges have you seen in your experience to obtain these results?
Yep. Really good question. So in the engagements that we've delivered, it does include a wide range of professions. And there are many components that, although are mathematical, I think there are better professions that can deliver it, whether it be engineers in terms of asset damage modelling, asset failure modelling, or if it's climate scientists in modelling the chronic and acute weather conditions, or even NatCat modellers who aren't necessarily actuaries to model their components. And it's about understanding the assumptions underlying each of their components and making sure that there is no conflicting assumptions as you integrate it. And finally, after incorporating all of these moving parts, got to do sensible checks, sensitivity checks, validation checks, sending that message to a wider group of audience and making sure that it passes their smell check.
And I think the other thing is to have the ability to explain the results in an easy to understand fashion through words, so that the top executives can, clearly understand with a simple answer explanation of results.
Thanks, Alison. Thank you for pointing out the inherent inaccuracies in modelling individual asset locations. Could you comment a bit when you're working with corporates how you deal with the time element? Because climate change risk, it's very long-term in nature, whereas looking at an income statement or a budget projection 3 to 5 years, how do you bridge that difference?
Yeah, we're very particular about communicating the uncertainty involved in long-term projections. And when we do our analysis, we break it down into 2 parts: the transition risk assessment and the physical climate risk assessment. Generally, what we've found is the transition risk assessment is potentially more short-term as government organisations respond to climate change through regulation and things such as taxation. And although it's not as certain whether carbon taxation will come into effect, I guess clients can have a better expectation of what those potential things on the horizon might be. Whereas when we model very far out into the future, 2100, it's anyone's guess what could happen. And we're very, very particular when we communicate that message.
If I could perhaps add on to that, because that really begs the question, given all the analysis that you've been talking about, under the control cycle, which we're all embedded with, right? Comes back down to specifying the problem. So what problem that is being specified are you trying to solve? So that's the question I've actually got for you. So what kind of problems are you solving here?
Yes. So what our purpose has been is to encourage money to move in the right direction towards either resilience or climate change mitigation activity or adaptation activity. And what we've found is the best way to encourage big money to move in the right direction is to show what the numbers are financially. And what we've seen is organisations, government, they will make moves based on dollars.
Hi, Michelle here again. Have you seen results from your work with your clients? And the second question, I assume you have an ongoing relationship with your clients. How often do you change your models, and obviously to the control cycle, you monitor your results from your model and then you update it?
I really love that question, and I would love for you to ask that question to me again in 3 years, because I think it's still really early days. So we haven't had repeat work yet. All these engagements we've classified as one-off engagements because we don't try to do an annual recurrence. But when the time comes then for us to re-engage with these clients on the next cycle, 3 to 5 years, I would love to see how that feedback loop occurs and how accurate, where we're wrong, where our assumptions were wrong, and yeah, I'll get back to you then.
But some of the things we've seen in the energy sector is the thought about capital expenditure, about when to replace assets. Also, what's the lifespan of an asset? So those strategic decisions, which are really important, which downstream become part of the customer cost of if it's electricity, what's the ultimate customer going to pay for electricity down the track? So a number of different scenarios give the executives some points to sort of reference to say this might happen, and it will impact strategic choices down the track.
Sounds like something you could present at the next ICA.
For sure.
Hi, Andrew here. Thanks for your presentation. Just interested to get your thoughts around how climate change, you mentioned spans for a long period of time, and obviously uncertain. How do you bring about, climate scenario narratives to clients? And how have you, I guess, captured that in providing, potential income statements and whatnot to your clients as well?
Yeah. So if I was to interpret that question, how do I present the information about how the physical world is changing and potentially how the economic environment is changing? And a lot of that so myself, I'm not a data scientist, nor am I a NatCat modeler. So as KPMG, we do have partnerships with a panel of vendors, a panel of data scientists and a panel of NatCat modelers. And we pretty much come on a unified front and pretty much leverage others' expertise in conveying that message around particularly the physical climate. But when we're talking about the economic environment, we do have some specialisation there, and we can talk about the inflationary effects of decarbonisation across different jurisdictions and economies. I could talk about that with you later.
Tonight, not at Luna Park.
Yeah, but yeah, it's different people bring different skill sets to the floor. Leverage others when needed, and when it's our opportunity to shine, I don't hesitate to talk about how different commodities and services are going to be impacted through decarbonisation.
And I'm guessing that goes through a range of scenarios as well.
Yes.
In terms of like the NGFS scenarios.
Yes, exactly. And it's important to make sure that the physical scenario and the transition scenario are speaking the same. Yep.
Cool, thanks.
All right, well, thank you very much, Joseph and Richard.